This is part 3 of my balancing chemical equations using the algebraic method. And step 1 says compare reactant side elements to product side elements. So first off, I'm going to label each side. So these are my reactants, these are my products. And I'm going to list each one. So you got silver, fluorine, calcium, and chlorine. And on the reactant side, we have 1 silver, 1 fluorine, 1 calcium, and 2 chlorines. Do the same thing on the product side. So we have 1 silver, 1 chlorine, 1 calcium, and 2 fluorines. Alright, so fluorines don't match up and chlorines don't match up, so this is not a balanced equation. So we'll go on to the next step that says multiply a distinct variable into each term. So I'm going to rewrite the original equation. Leave myself a little space in the front of each. Alright, and as far as distinct variables go, I'm going to write A, B, C, and D. Each term gets a variable. And what's going to happen with these variables is they're going to multiply into each element in each term. So same thing happened there, same thing happened there. So now we have to create equations involving the variables and coefficients for each element. And once I do it, it'll become clear what that step means. So similar to what we did up top, I'm going to write each element out. So we have Ag, we have fluorine, we have calcium, and we have chlorine. So in the first equation, we're going to have 1 Ag happening in the first term. So A multiplies in one time, I'll just write A. Ag doesn't show up in the second term. On the product side, Ag shows up one time in the first term and it doesn't show up in the second term. So C multiplies into Ag one time here. So what I'm going to do is write C on the other side of the equation. And that's it for the first one. So fluorine's equation is going to go A multiplies into that one time, so I'm going to write A. And it doesn't show up in the second term. Fluorine doesn't show up in the third term, but it shows up in the last term. And it's D multiplying into 2 fluorines. So what I'll write here is 2D. Then for calcium, it doesn't show up in the first term, but it shows up in the second term. And B is multiplying into that one time. So I'll write B. Then on the other side, C doesn't go into calcium at all, and D multiplies into it one time. So I write D. That's it for that equation. And for chlorine, chlorine doesn't show up in the first term. It shows up in the second term twice, and B is multiplying into it. So I'm going to write 2B. And on the other side of the equation, chlorine shows up one time, and it's being multiplied by C. So I'm going to write C. So now, let's write out each variable. And the next step says set first variable equal to 1. And in this case, and it should in every case, A is going to always equal 1. And solve for all the other variables this way. So if A equals 1, you see that C is going to equal 1. Okay, in solving the fluorine equation, you see that A equals 1, so there's only one unknown variable here. So I'm going to write 1 equals 2D. If you divide by 2, the 2's cancel, and you see that D equals 1/2. And then looking at the calcium equation, you see that B equals D. And we just solved for D. It says it's 1/2, so that means that D equals 1/2. So now we solve for all 4 variables, but you never want to deal with fractions. So we'll multiply a 2 into each one. So now A equals 2, B equals 1, because these 2's cancel, C equals 2, and D equals 1. So now the next step says substitute in your results. And I'm going to just erase the bottom half here for some space. So now substituting in our results, we had A, and A equals 2. Change my tool. A equals 2, so we'll write 2 AGF plus B only equals 1, so we won't write anything. C equals 2, so we'll write 2 AgCl plus D equals 1, so we won't write anything. And like we did in the beginning, let's run through each element and see if we have a balanced equation. So AgF, Ca, and Cl. Let me erase that. Okay, so for Ag, we have a 2 multiplying into it, so there's 2 of those. F, there's 2 of those. Ca, there's only 1. And Cl, there's 2 of those. So repeating for the second side, or the product side. We have a 2 multiplying into Ag. We have a 2 going into chlorine. And there's only 1 calcium. And there's 2 fluorines. So as you can see, everything matches up. And once you get everything to match up, you know you have a balanced equation. So thanks for watching, and check out part 4.